Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it. Let's open up that race line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 509, coming to you on Wednesday, October 4th. We're going to look forward to USC and Arizona meeting, clashing horns, locking horns, doing all those things Saturday night at the Coliseum, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy, email address rantoftroy@fanside.com. Phone number 818-643-7227. Second Whisper and Show. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you can find your podcasts. We are there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give us a review. That'll be awesome too. And of course, here live on YouTube where we are right now. As always, I'm your host, Meyer Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Radio Tour Studio in Los Angeles, Lisa Derritola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We're back for another week. We put in the little episode description over on the YouTubes. Is USC on upset alert? And Tim in LA is not happy with us. Not happy. Tim in LA says, upset alert. No, okay. See you guys in the CarCast. Bye.
I feel it. Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe it's a little clickbait. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, Arizona did just almost do something interesting against Washington.
Almost.
USC almost did something very interesting in the worst kind of way against Colorado. Both games, USC and Arizona, both had games come down to a last-second onside kick. So, yeah.
We'll see. We will see what happens with our preview. Of course, Tim in LA now says he didn't rage quit, but big shout out to everyone who's joining us live. We always appreciate you guys here on a Wednesday, 5 p.m. If you're on your way home, if you're already home, whatever you're doing, we appreciate you guys as always. But you know what would help grow the show even more? Alicia, do you know what would? DraftKings. Because SC is playing against Arizona. So you know what's happened? Our friends over at DraftKings have upped the ante. DraftKings is running a new promotion that you won't want to miss. New users, including our friends in Arizona, can place a $5 bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded with a separate no-sweat single-game parlay every single day you opt in. All you have to do is sign up with our code Rant of Troy. Using our code Rant of Troy not only gets you the bonus bets, but it helps directly supports this very podcast, this single one that you're watching right now. So if you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, including USC going on the road next week to Indiana, you might be staying in Illinois. Either one of those works. Michigan, maybe you're staying in Michigan. It all works. All you have to do is use the code Rant of Troy to maximize your first bets and parlays. This offer is available only to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states such as Arizona, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. Yeah. So please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. All right, Alicia, there's plenty of stuff to go on. Let's get straight into the news, shall we? All right, Alicia, we got to start with some injury updates. Zachariah Branch did not participate in USC's road win last week in Boulder against Colorado. He was limited in practice. this week, and the injury is still considered undisclosed. There you go.
Yeah, so the reporters at practice have had video of Zachariah Branch in uniform at practice, coming out the tunnel from Connor Morissette. I've seen Lincoln Riley updated that he is progressing, according to a tweet from Ryan Karchi, but it's still not not clear what the injury is. So we really have no idea whether or not we should expect him to play this week, but he is practicing, even if he is limited as a practice participant. So we're definitely on Zachariah Branch watch going into Saturday, and I guess we will find out on Saturday if he's going to play.
Yeah, the Trojans number one leader in the world in punt returns, kickoff returns. He will want to face Arizona, who, spoiler alert, the last place team in the country in punt return yardage. Teams are averaging 25 yards a punt return against Arizona.
You know Zachariah Branch wants to be back on the field for that game. Absolutely.
Small print on that, literally one return for 25 yards. So who knows what that means. But yeah, the other news, let's talk about Lincoln Riley talking about Eric Gentry and his snap counts. This is a quote. Quote, I think it's just competition. Eric's back full go, but when you miss time that Eric's missed, I mean, he missed all of spring ball, basically the last half of last season. Then he was very limited through all of fall camp. He's healthy, but he's still getting his feet underneath him. He's still getting back to used to being on the field and playing a lot of snaps. We've got a bigger linebacker room than we had last year. It is what it is. There are more good players. I think Eric's going to have a chance to be have a prominent role on our team and our defense. I was proud of him the other day that even in a game where he didn't play a million defensive snaps, the punt block was clearly one of the biggest plays in that game. So he's still making an impact. Quality of player he is. If he continues to work hard and stay focused, it's hard to imagine him not getting better and better and playing a pretty big role for us. There you go. What do you say?
Lincoln Riley's given us a lot of coach speak recently.
Little bit.
I don't think this satisfies my questions about the linebacker snap counts in general, because Eric Gentry was one of the ones with more snaps against ASU, and then turn around for Colorado. It felt like he was USC's best linebacker against ASU outside of that one huge missed tackle. But the rest of the linebackers continue to miss tackles. The rest of the linebackers continue to miss assignments. And it feels like there is not a consistent standard being placed about who is getting playing time based on how their performance is on the field. And Lincoln Riley can talk about trained eyes all he wants, but there are some things that you don't have to have a trained eye to sort of understand. And I think what's very clear to me is that Eric Gentry, when he has been on the field, has been a more consistently better option than most of the other linebackers on the field. I think against Colorado, I think Mason Cobb was not good against ASU. Let's just get that flat out. Certainly in the first half, it was not a good game for him. He turned around against Colorado and absolutely responded. Had a really strong game for the most part.
He might have been SC's best player on defense in the first half for sure.
Yeah. So that was really good to see from Mason Cobb. But we continue to see mistakes from someone like Tackett Curtis. We continue to see inconsistency from someone like Rajon Davis. And we continue to see basically none of Shane Lee. And we saw less of Eric Gentry against Colorado for some reason that I do not understand. Now, the one thing I do want to say on this subject, though, is that while I'm confused about why USC is playing the linebackers that they are playing at the rate that they are playing them, I think that the bigger issue I have here is not necessarily that Eric Gentry is not playing more, or that Rajon Davis is not playing more, or that Tackett Curtis is playing as much as he is, or that we're not seeing any of Shane Lee, or any of those things. It's that all of the linebackers across the board are generally subpar. Like, it doesn't really matter who is in there. Most of the time, the linebackers are the problem on this defense. And we don't necessarily put a ton of stock in Pro Football Focus grades because there's a lot of sort of problematic things about even trying to assess a grade if you aren't the coach that's calling the play, that knows the assignment, that is all of those kinds of things. But like, it is noteworthy that USC's highest graded linebacker of the linebacker core that sees playing time this year is Eric Gentry. And then it's Mason Cobb, not too far behind. And then it's Rajon Davis. And then it's Shane Lee. And then way several tiers down below that is Tackett Curtis. And all of them are in the bottom half of USC defenders across the board. So, like, is this an individual linebacker issue or is this a linebacker issue? And I don't know that those questions are being answered for USC fans in a way that I don't think there is a satisfying answer from the coach for what it's worth. I think Lincoln Riley could stand there and give 50,000 different combinations of answers and none of them would be very satisfying. But this is an issue that is a major talking point of this season because the missed tackle percentage for USC's linebackers, according to Pro Football Focus, the one who has missed the least percent of his tackles is Shane Lee at 14%, which is still too damn high. Eric Gentry at 20%, which is still too damn high. Mason Cobb at 21.9%, which is still too damn high. Tackett Curtis at 30.4%, which is way too damn high. And Rajon Davis at 30.8%, which is extremely way too damn high. So
I'd love to know a national average for those things to understand what that percentage is.
Yeah.
Like I know that a 300 hitter in baseball is good. Like I don't know what a sure tackler percentage is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But comparatively, 14% versus 30% from Shane Lee to Tackett Curtis is a huge discrepancy. Yeah, 100%. So I don't know. I think there's we know that, injuries are not something that the coaching staff is always wanting to talk about. Riley is seemingly adamant that injuries is not the issue here. But I don't know that that's I don't know what to believe in general. You know what I mean? Like you said, I don't know what satisfying answer are you truly going to get, because if Lincoln Riley just came out and said, "Hey, Alex Grinch likes Tackett Curtis," is that going to make people happy? No. What's the satisfying answer? Him to get out there and say, "Yeah, Tackett Curtis sucks this year," and we should have had Gentry and all these things. Like, I don't think he's going to say that either. So I don't know. It's hopefully you see those things change as things go forward. I'm just pessimistic about the injury thing. I think the injury thing is.
It sounds like an excuse to me.
You think that it's more so an excuse than anything? Like the slowing him back in kind of thing?
Well, because if they were slowing him back in, then why did he have more snaps against ASU than he did against Colorado?
That makes sense. Yes. I don't necessarily buy the slow rollout from last season thing, but like I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's just not always 100%. Maybe there's
maybe.
And it's easier to look back and say, well, he's coming off of an injury than it is to say, hey, maybe he's not always 100% every day. I don't know. This is just me completely speculating. It means nothing, but I don't know. The problem is when the results are so off the board and the snap count is so different from game to game, from player to player, you can't help but sit in a situation where you're trying to grasp at straws for what the answer really could be, right? Yeah. Like that's the problem. So yeah, we'll see what happens defensively for the Trojans up on Saturday night at the Coliseum, where let's get right into it. USC hosts Arizona for the very final time. Of course, the Arizona Wildcats came into the conference in 1978 from the WAC, turning the conference into the Pac-10, previously the Pac-8s. What do you think about the series so far, SC and Arizona? I say so far. What did you think about the series? I guess I got to talk about it in past tense.
It's no offense to Arizona. I feel like it's one of the least interesting series that USC has in the Pac-12. There have been some memorable games, but like
the ASU series seemingly a little more interesting,
more memorable, more interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Marquise Lee has his Superman crazy game against Arizona. There have been some close games, sort of, but yeah, no. Like, have there been instant classics between USC and Arizona?
I think so. I think you go back to first of all the Marquise Lee game.
Yeah, that's
an instant classic.
Like, to me, that's Marquise Lee. It just so happens he did it against Arizona.
Sure, in a losing effort, of course.
Yeah.
Matt Scott puking on the sideline and getting the concussion, and like probably should have never been back
allowed
in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. 2011 was the crazy shootouts, which Barkley set a record for passing yards in a game.
There was the Khalil Tate at the Coliseum third quarter penalty fest.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 2016. One of the games that I always remember, USC losing in 2009 to Arizona.
Yeah.
In December. So I had, grown up going to every SC home game, but in high school, like doing extracurriculars and stuff, like I ended up missing a few games. And one of the games I ended up missing was the Stanford game in 2007. The
upset.
The upset loss. Yeah. That game I actually stayed home to watch a Cubs playoff game. Very bad decision because the Cubs got swept by the D-backs that day. So I missed the SC losing that game. Earlier in 2009, I missed the Stanford game, the What's Your Deal game, because it was my grandpa's funeral. So the Arizona game in 2009 was the first SC home game that I saw the Trojans lose since 2001, which was just so unexpected because that game was so wild. Arizona puts together a drive on like the last, like the 3 minutes to go. There's these like frat boys 2 rows in front of us that were just losing their minds. It was surreal. But
I just remember,
you know what it was? It was a current defense game, but in 2009, which meant they only gave up 21 points, but it felt like 42.
Yeah, I remember that game. I don't remember anything about that game. I remember before that game, I went to a tailgate and was talking to people from message boards, and somebody asked me like, "How are you feeling about the game?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm worried. I've got a bad feeling about it." And the person I was talking to was like, "Oh no, it's nothing to worry about." And then I just remember like during the game, it was like I had a bad feeling, and it was like that feeling was correct. So
the 2001 game in Tucson, the game that sparked everything, the pick six by Chris Richard, the one that if you were a big fan of the Pete Carroll era, that's what turned everything around and got SC going. So that's a game I think people will remember forever as well. But here we are, 2023, the last USC Arizona game. The Wildcats 3-2 coming into the Coliseum, 1-1 in the Pac-12. They've played 2 games. They've played the best team in the conference and the worst. Arizona barely beat Stanford by a point on the road up on the farm. Then hosted Washington at home and nearly beat top 10 Washington last week, losing by a touchdown. So I don't know what to make of these Wildcats. Of course, they're not rated. You look at the metrics, they're 49th in SP+, 60th by Jeff Sagarin, and 70th by FBI. Sort of all over the board. It comes down to injuries at quarterback will be the big storyline this week going into the game. Jaden DeLara, of course, the quarterback, the transfer from Washington State. We've seen him at U of A. The gunslingeriest gunslinger to ever gunsling.
Yes.
Jayden Delora nearly beat the Trojans last year in Tucson. He left the Stanford game with, quote, a significant lower leg injury, according to Pete Thamel. It's come out now that it's an ankle injury. He missed the Washington game in which redshirt freshman Noah Fafita came in and made his first start against Washington and nearly beat him. So I don't know what to make of that. We don't know what the situation is going to be on Saturday. According to Justin Spears from the Daily Star in Tucson, Jed Fish says quarterback Jayden Delora, ankle, will start against USC only if he's healthy enough to play. Quote, that would be a safe statement to make. Shrug?
Well, we know that he didn't practice at the start of the week. It's hard to say because ankle injuries can be the kind of thing, like, if it was a high ankle sprain or something like that, then you wouldn't expect him to be back at this point. But also ankle injuries are the kind of thing where they will tape it up and just, like, give you an injection and you'll just go out there and play on it because it's taped up so firmly that it doesn't matter. I am operating under the assumption that until Jedfish says that Jayden Delora will play, you have to assume that Noah Fafita is the guy. Just because if a player doesn't practice if a quarterback doesn't practice at the start of the week,
yeah,
I think it's probably safe to assume that it's a uphill battle for him to get back in time to be ready to play to play on Saturday. That's just my read.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that you look at how the Trojans have been against Jayden Delora, and that's sort of a concern. Noah Fafita, someone who maybe isn't as quite as mobile as Jayden Delora. He's only had 9 carries for like 28 rushing yards this year. We know that Jayden Delora likes to stay in the pocket as well and look downfield if he can. But Noah Fafita, 74.5% completion percentage so far, a little bit less on the mistake prone side. Which might be more interesting, right? Because the thing with Jayden Delora, he's going to make the great plays. He's also going to shoot himself in the foot. Like, that has been the key on Jayden Delora. You and I were talking about it. Like, if you were going to play Arizona in a one game situation, you'd hope that Jayden Delora was not the quarterback. If you were going to play them every game for 12 straight games, like a full slate of games, you'd hope that Jayden Delora was the quarterback for all 12. Because in a one game situation, you could get superstar Jayden Delora. In a 12 game slate, you're going to get up and down and back up and like all those different things. And this is where I wonder if Noah Fafita is a guy who sort of limited the damage on the mistakes. Only had 1 interception against Washington. Has thrown for 301 yards so far. Maybe doesn't have the upside of the wow factor that Jayden Delora brings. But if he can reduce the number of mistakes and then funnel the ball over to his incredible playmakers at wide receiver in McMillan and Cowing, maybe that's better for U of A. Like looking at Twitter, like U of A Twitter is all in on Fafita.
I can see it. Because Fafita allows Arizona to maybe just have their playmakers at the skill positions go make the plays instead of having to rely on the quarterback to make the plays with Jayden Delora.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Jonah Coleman against Washington break a few runs, break a few screen passes. They've got obviously Tatoro McMillan, who is an incredible receiver who can make a catch at every sort of level. Can't sleep on Jacob Cowing either. So they have dudes out there. I think that the counterpoint to the you'd rather have Noah Fafita is when you're playing a USC defense that is vulnerable in one-on-one situations. I think that Jayden Delora's arm would scare me a hell of a lot. If you're asking USC's DBs to try to prevent Tatoro McMillan or Jacob Cowing from making plays against them when Jaden Delora is slinging it down the field. I think USC is probably in a disadvantaged position in that matchup where Noah Fafita doesn't have the same kind of arm. Yes, he's not going to force it the same way that Delora will force it and get into trouble.
Right.
But he's also, at least from what I've seen of him watching the Washington game, he's also not quite as capable of just tossing up a 50-50 ball and giving his receiver a chance there. So I think the ceiling on Arizona's offense is limited. It is more limited with Fafita, but to be totally fair, their floor gets raised by a ton because he's not out there throwing 4 interceptions in a game. So
Right.
the question I would have is, when you're at home, I think Noah Fafita is a quarterback that can give you a chance to upset Washington. When you're on the road, that's where I think I have a bigger question about whether or not Noah Fafita is the kind of quarterback that could pull off an upset against USC, like at the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Where Jaden Delora could do that in theory.
Yeah, I don't think the Coliseum is a overly scary place to play compared to, some of the hallowed grounds of college football in terms of loud, raucous environments. I think it can be, but it hasn't consistently been that. But it's not Stanford. Stanford on the road being sort of like your first entry point to like lead a comeback win up at Palo Alto. Like that is a completely different atmosphere than he's going to have to face on Saturday night if it is Fafita that ends up getting the start. So yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about the rest of this Arizona offense. Of course, 23rd in SP plus. They like to throw the football. They like to throw the football a lot. We know we talked about the wide receivers, McMillan and Cowing. Does it worry you, SC's ability to cover them? I think the obvious answer is yes, given what happened to Marion Miller last week, who didn't have the stats coming into it and the prerequisite honors that like someone like Jacob Cowing did, who was, all Pac-12 second team wide receiver last year. And then McMillan was an honorable mention, right? Like, those guys have been known commodities coming into this game, which I think makes it sort of worrisome because these are the best 2 receivers that SC will have faced to this point in the season. You can make the argument that at the end of the season, these are maybe 2 of the top 5 or 6 receivers that SC will face all year. That's the worry, right?
Yeah, I mean, very much so a worry. I think that's my biggest worry in this game. We have seen USC do to other teams what Tatara McMillan and Jacob Cowing could potentially do to USC. And by the way, did do to USC along with Dorian Singer last year.
Yeah.
Which is just win their one-on-one battles. Like, I mean, USC beats Utah in the YOLO ball game specifically because Matt Fink, a backup quarterback, is just chucking it up to his receivers, and his receivers are making the play every time in sort of man-to-man situations. And if Arizona does that, there is a decent chance that that's what's happened. But that's what is able to happen. Now, obviously, the problem with doing that is that you are in 50-50 situations where USC's DBs could also go out there and make the play. But Tatara McMillan is a guy who will just make those catches all over the place. And the one thing you can say is like, at least Arizona doesn't have Dorian Singer doing the same thing. Because that's the introduction we all got to Dorian Singer was him making, I think it was 3 absolutely otherworldly touchdown catches against good coverage. Tatara McMillan is capable of doing the exact same thing. So this is a worry. This is something that USC has to be alive to. And this is something that USC has to do significantly better than they did against Colorado.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that SC defensively will be interesting to see how they match up is strictly when it comes down to scoring. I mean, we know we've talked about this before. We talked about it 2 weeks ago with the ASU game. ASU was not scoring at all going into that game, and SC gave up 28 points, right? So take that for what it's worth. But this Arizona team, as much as they've got, playmakers at receiver especially, they're not scoring a lot of points. 20 24 points on the road at Mississippi State. Okay, it's a road game against an SEC opponent, whatever. But since then, 31 against a UTEP team that gave up 45 at home to UNLV. 21 points on the road against Stanford. 24 points against Washington seems like, an admirable amount to put on the board. But even against the teams that they should be scoring a lot on, they're not necessarily doing that. So do you think that kind of bodes well for SC if they're struggling to get into the end zone? We look at the points per drive, 2.5, not great. We know, this is a talented offense, but, not necessarily performing up to maybe their talent offensively.
Yeah, they're scoring like in the red zone. I mean, they're moving the ball. Obviously, their available yards. They're a good percentage of available yards, ranking 30th nationally. That's definitely something to keep an eye out for. But when they get in the red zone, they're only scoring touchdowns on 71% of drives into the red zone.
Yeah,
that's sort of middle. This Arizona team is so middling. All of their stats, everything, it just has them like smack dab in the middle of whatever it is that you're evaluating, whether they're in the Pac-12 or nationally. So it's not that they're bad at it. Like we looked at teams like Stanford and Nevada and even Colorado in some areas, and look at they're straight up bad. This Arizona team, I don't think they're bad in any one area. They're just very middling. And the worry for USC about that is, like you said, Arizona State had come in and not been scoring, and that didn't seem to be a problem against,
right. It didn't matter.
USC.
Yeah.
The big difference in this game, and I'm going to probably be bringing this up all episode,
it's at home.
It's at home. Yeah. And Arizona gets Washington in Tempe and is able to keep it close and keep it interesting. But we've seen,
and we know that Huskies can't perform in the desert because their paws burn on the
and USC
the turf.
I think a lot of the doom and gloom around USC is also coming off of 2 road games and 2 difficult, sort of tricky road games that they didn't quite rise to the occasion of. But being back home at the Coliseum is a place of comfort that I think also you're putting Arizona on the road. And as you've said, like we've seen Arizona go on the road and sort of have their own issues the way that every team has their issues on the road. So, it's certainly not a matchup that you can overlook on that front when it comes to the ASU offense, especially going against a USC defense that has so much to prove to us.
Right. Yeah. By the way, I buried in all of this Arizona's offensive coordinator, Brennan Carroll.
Yeah, I love that little detail.
I looked it up. I'm like,
what has he been up to?
Yeah, what has he been up to? So he was, this is his second year as I believe as their OC. The interesting second or third year, he might have been the Jed Fish original hire in 2021. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I looked it up. He got his first full-time job when he was 25 as being SC's tight end coach in 2004. I remember him, in the 4th and 9 game right before the Bush push, being one of the big, snap motion guys, the what do you call it? The spike motion, right? We're going to spike it and all that stuff. He was only like 26 at the time. It's crazy. Here he is. He's 44 and now the offensive coordinator of Arizona. Let's look to Arizona's defense. We talked about middling. I think this is a sort of middling defense. They're not terrible. We've seen terrible Washington defense. Arizona defenses. This one is not them. They're also not necessarily a banner defense to discuss either. Points per drive, 59th in the country. This is the team that, on defense, you look at SP Plus on defense is 92nd. Not great. That has a lot of preseason factors, of course, but they held Washington to only 31 points on the road. That's Michael Penix, a quarterback just as good as Caleb Williams for all intents and purposes when it comes to production. And they held him. He didn't really have the big day getting the ball to Adunze and all those guys. So yeah, I don't know what to make of this defense. They're led by Jacob Manu on at will linebacker, 49 tackles, three sacks, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 hurries. I think he's the guy to keep an eye on. Outside of that, yeah, they've got playmakers at safety. Dalton Johnson, 31 tackles, but this is a defense that has not forced an interception at all this season. They sort of have a turnover issue because of that, because you look at their turnover margin is -5 on the season. A lot of that came because they were super turnover happy in Starkville to go on the road and play Mississippi State in week 2. But they're also just that negative numbers because they're not forcing turnovers themselves. They're not exactly turnover prone outside of that game on offense, but on defense, they're just not forcing turnovers. 0 interceptions, one of 5 teams in the country not to have forced an interception this year, which is interesting when you look at the other 4 teams of those 5. It's Arizona State, New Mexico State, and UTSA. Alicia, put those on a map and circle it. They're all next to each other. UTEP, by the way, the school in the middle of that circle, 1 interception.
So-
what is it? Like, does it make any sense to you? It's weird.
Something in the air. Something in the air means no intercept. I would say it's like whatever the reverse of a no-fly zone. It's
the no pick zone.
no pick zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a weird statistical quirk. I love a weird statistical quirk, I will say. But
Yeah.
I will admit I watched the Arizona defense against Washington. I watched it live, and then I went back and watched a cut up of the game, and I still can't tell you how Washington only scored 31 points. Like, they drove, they were driving. They didn't have a ton of really explosive play. They had a bunch of like 10 to 15 yard plays. They didn't really go crazy with the 20, 30, 40 yard plays. So maybe it's just that Arizona was able to keep things in front of them a little bit. They did get a fumble recovery in the red zone late in that game that helped Arizona move towards their comeback attempt. But there was nothing necessarily about the defense except for they didn't make big mistakes that limited Washington. It felt like to me more like Washington's they had penalty issues and like the things that happen to teams on the road when they're just out of sync.
Right.
And the credit I'll give to Arizona's defense is that they didn't make the big mistakes. They were generally sure tackling. They were generally keeping things in front of them. They weren't getting burned over the top. Michael Penix is very capable of killing a team over the top with his passing, and they kept things in front of them, which is something to think about for USC because USC's offense is also going to try to beat you the way that that Washington, with explosive plays and all of that. And if Arizona is able to sort of keep things in front of them, force USC to drive, and then let USC make the mistakes that's going to prevent USC from scoring, that could be a winning formula.
Yeah.
The difference, again, is that this is not in Tempe. This is at the Coliseum, and USC isn't traveling.
Tucson.
Tucson. USC isn't traveling, and USC is back at home where we know that the USC offense certainly is more efficient than they were in the previous 2 weeks on the road. So this is a really tough matchup for Arizona's defense, but it's a tough matchup for everybody's defense. The thing that I'm most curious about is that Arizona's defense has been quite good against the run this year. They're 23rd this year in rush defense, holding teams to under 100 yards per game. We know that USC we know that USC chooses not to run, but the run game is also something that USC needs to be able to establish more often in games, more consistently in games, in order to have the balanced offense that theoretically you want to have.
Right.
And we saw USC not necessarily be able to set the tone on the ground against Colorado. So I would want to see USC try to set the tone on the ground in this game, but Arizona has proven capable of standing their ground against the run. I'm very curious about this matchup between their defensive front against a USC offensive line that I think is underperforming at this point. So that's definitely the thing I have circled.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Trojans back at home. Maybe having something to prove, coming off of the win against Colorado. But like, if you're the offense, you want to prove that fourth quarter was an anomaly.
Yeah,
where SC had 3 straight drives at the end that did not end up in points, and kind of helped the game sort of implode defensively, because if they would have been able to score, they could have at least done their part to prevent the implosion. But I want to see what happens in the run game, because we know that Lincoln Riley has come out and said, this week that they should have run the ball more. They should have done all those things. Is it fan service? Maybe. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of concerted effort to like make a point in running the ball more on Saturday at the Coliseum against Arizona. I don't know. We're gonna see. This is a rush defense that is probably significantly better than Colorado's was going in, because that Colorado's defense was not great on the ground. So I don't know. We're going to see how that all comes together that way. Lisa, we got a bunch of stuff to get to, including over under though. So just get to it, shall we?
So you're going over.
I'm feeling bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right, everybody. Let's get to good old over under. Coming into the week, I have a lead. 16-14 is my record. 15-14 is yours. Let's get to the over under picks. USC and Arizona, Saturday night, ESPN. Your first over under is what?
I'm going 4.5 Arizona plays of 20 or more yards. Now,
classic.
Yeah. Well, this year, absolutely. Maybe this is just going to be a feature of over under until it stops being a thing. The reason I said it at 4.5 is that USC is averaging 5.8 20-yard plays allowed per game. I repeat, 5.8 20-yard plays per game. Arizona's offense averages 4.4 20-yard plays per game. So I set it at 4.5. Is it going to be above Arizona's average is basically what I'm asking.
Wait, hold on. You said SC allows how many per game?
5.8.
Per game?
Per game.
Can I just say that I looked up? Iowa has allowed 6 in the entire season.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I have some thoughts on this before I let you make your pick. I'm going to try and get to them quickly so that we don't go over here too much. But this is the most damning stat I found about the defense, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Pessimistic Alicia is out in full force.
I don't know that you can understand what 5.8 points per game. Oh, sorry, not points. We'll call them explosive plays per game.
Sure.
Just for ease. When I say an explosive play, I mean 20-yard plays. How bad this is. So UCLA is the best team in the Pac-12 this year at preventing explosive plays. They only allow 1.7 per game. They're doing a very, very good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford, the team that USC took to task and absolutely rolled completely over, allows 4.8 per game. Arizona, a defense that is, as we've talked about, defense that, as we've talked about, not too great. 4.8 per game, explosive plays. Stanford and Arizona are 10th and 11th in the Pac-12 this year, because somebody else is 12th in this metric. Somebody else is 12th, and as you might have already guessed, it's USC. Stanford and Arizona allow, or more aptly, USC allows 1 full explosive play per game more than the next worst defense in the Pac-12. That is how bad USC's defense is playing in terms of preventing explosive plays. Every 12 plays that USC's defense is on the field, they give up an explosive play of 20 yards or more. Every 12 plays.
Not good.
That's 7% of USC's plays that they have on defense are for 20 or more yards. Like, this is extremely bad. Last year, across the entire season, the defense that we saw USC field, which we all know was not good enough, allowed 5.3 per game. USC's at 5.8. And they haven't played Washington yet. They haven't played Notre Dame yet. They haven't played Oregon yet. Those three teams, Washington's number 1 in explosive plays, by the way, those three teams are top 15 in terms of creating plays that go for 20 or more yards. And USC hasn't even played them yet. And they're already averaging 5.8 per game. It is astoundingly bad. And the only good news about this is that if USC somehow found a way to just not give up that many explosive plays, the defense wouldn't be in trouble.
Well,
but they are, because that's what they're doing.
But this is what we've talked about before, right? Like the Nevada game was quintessentially it, right? They gave up 3 plays that was half of Nevada's yards, and the other like 70 something plays were the rest of the yards, right? Like, I wonder if you parsed out all the information for plays that allow 19 and fewer yards. If you take the yards per play and all those plays, and then the plays that are 20 plus yards, and so you just take those out, I bet SC's yards per play is pretty good.
It's not, it's probably not that bad.
Because this is the problem: it's the big plays, and outside of the big plays, SC does make the stops, but the ones that they don't just absolutely tanks everything else to the point that you can't even you can't actually sit there and say, yeah, but what if? Because there's just too many of them.
Yeah, you can be playing really well for 11 plays, but on that 12th play, you're giving up 20 plus yards.
Right.
You're just going to be a bad defense when you're doing it that way. For the record, as I said, Arizona's offense averages 4.4 explosive plays per game. They had 1 play of explosive play against Washington. It was a 33-yard screen pass to Jonah Coleman. So that's certainly something that USC should keep an eye out, considering the screens that USC has gotten into trouble against. But I set the over-under at 4.5. I didn't want to go higher than that just because that's just really high. But I don't know. I could have gone higher on that.
Well, I'm going to go lower because I am taking the under here. Over under 4.5 20 plus yard plays. Here's my rationale for it, and this will lock you into the over, by the way. If you would have set this line at 5.5, if you would have set this line at 3.5, I would have taken the over. 4.5 means they have to give up 5 20 plus yard plays. I think Arizona is surely capable of it when you have the receivers that they do with McMillan and Cowan, but if Fifita's the quarterback, I think maybe they take less risks downfield, less chances. That I don't know that I would bank on those big plays. If Jaden DeLaura was healthy and you knew he was going to be healthy going into this game, I think it's a different boat for me. So give me the under.
I feel you, but I am so glad that I baited you into taking that under.
Sure. We'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. Let's go to my first over-unders. Over under 35.5%. That is USC on third down. The Trojans are averaging 44.7% on third downs this year, but that is buoyed by one great performance in week 1 against San Jose State, because the Trojans are 33% or less in 3 of the 4 games since then. They were, in the last 2 weeks, 33 and 30%. It's not been good. Arizona's third down defense, pretty middling at 39.4%. Can they hold the Trojans to below 35.5? That's the line. Over under 35.5 USC third down conversions.
I'm going over on this specifically because USC is going back home, and I think that things are going to even out a little bit more in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of this offense. I think I personally am ascribing a lot of the weird out of syncness of the offense the last couple of weeks to being on the road. So taking the over there.
All right. That locks me into the under. We'll see how that goes. What's your next over under? What do you got?
Yeah, 4.5 Dorian Singer touches. I did touches just in case, there's a weird handoff, like extended handoff, sweep, whatever kind of thing. But Dorian Singer, notably a former Arizona Wildcat, but he's only averaging 2.4 catches per game this season. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not he's being used enough or whether or not he's involved enough. He had a season high of 4 catches against San Jose State, which is why I set my line at 4.5, because I think it's really a question of, will we see a season high from him in terms of catches? No USC receiver, though, is averaging more than 3.6 receptions per game. That's Taj Washington's average. So, in general, USC is spreading it around a lot. A lot of guys are catching passes, not a lot of guys catching a lot of passes. So, will we see Dorian Singer be more active against his former team, or will his sort of usage continue to be right around where it's been?
Yeah, there is nothing I subscribe to less than the idea that Dorian Singer's being underutilized at USC. I get that his numbers, 12 catches and 154 yards, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns, are not what he transferred for. I thoroughly understand that. But look at the rest of everything else. Mario Williams has 15 for $180. Like, the ball gets so distributed all over the place. Taj Washington and Brendan Rice have, more yards than those guys, but those guys also have like multiple 70-yard touchdowns under their belts. So I'm not buying the idea that he gets underutilized. There's just too many good receivers, and Caleb Williams distributes the ball all over the place. It's a good problem to have in the grand scheme of things, but 4.5 is just too high for me. I'm going to take the under. I think that he could have 4 catches and have a hell of a game. He doesn't necessarily need to have a million to have an input on this game, so I'm going to take the under.
I feel you. I'm just now hoping that USC goes out of their way to target him.
It would be cool. It'd be a good story. Him against his former team. Let's go to my next over under, which is going to be over under 3.5 Arizona first quarter points. Here we are back with early game scoring for USC's opponents. Arizona has not scored a single point in the first quarter against an FBS opponent this season. 0 points. 0 points. In 4 games. They did play NAU. They scored 7 in the first quarter against the Lumberjacks, but 0 against an FBS opponent. The Trojans have only allowed 14 points in the first quarter all season. Pretty solid. A touchdown to Nevada on a 70-something yard play that set up like a 2-yard touchdown or whatever it was. And then ASU scored a touchdown back a couple weeks ago on a short field after a fumble. Those are the only 2 blemishes that SC has allowed in the first quarter. Does Arizona get in on the board? 3.5 is the line, so they can get a field goal, and that's still under here. 3.5 points is the line.
It's funny that you bring up that Arizona State score in the first quarter, because that was the subject of another over-under, because Arizona State had not scored in, 6 quarters? And so we were sort of guessing how many quarters until they were going to score against USC, and that promptly got taken care of almost immediately. So
yeah,
I am taking the over here just because the universe likes to be funny about these kinds of things, and something weird and random in the first quarter will happen, and Arizona will score a touchdown, and everyone will freak out, blah blah blah. So I'm just playing the odds here. I think the funniest outcome is definitely Arizona scoring on their first drive.
Yeah, because they haven't all year. Yeah. We will see. Let's get to your last over under, which is what?
I've got 3.5 first down carries for whoever is quarterbacking Arizona. This can be scrambles or designed runs. It's just too hard to sort of differentiate. It's just rushes that result in a first down for the Arizona quarterback. And the reason I am doing this one is because USC has a bad habit of giving up first down rushes to quarterbacks this season. Shedeur Sanders scrambled for 4 first downs. Stanford's Ashton Daniels and Justin Lamson combined for 5, but Lamson was the one who really got things going with 4 on his own when he came in. Chevin Cordero obviously ran for 4 first downs. So the only quarterbacks that haven't done anything of note on the ground against USC are Drew Pine, who we wouldn't have expected from anyways, and Brandon Lewis from Nevada, who had 1 first down run. Now, Noah Fafita is not necessarily a great runner. Jayden Delora certainly is a little bit more dangerous with his
We just haven't
legs.
seen it yet. He could be.
That's
You
the
never
thing
know.
is Fafita. It's not that Fafita can't move. It's that he didn't really he didn't convert any first downs against Washington. He did have a few 5-yard runs, so he can move if he needs to. But I'm setting it at 3.5 just because so many quarterbacks have had 4.
Yeah.
That's where I'm setting the line.
I like this line. I think it's good. I think it's smart. I get why you've done it, but you've set the line too high for me. I am taking the under as well. All your lines just slightly too high for me. I'm taking the under. I'm a little too conservative on all of them. If Jayden Delora was the quarterback, I might take the over though. Just FYI, just because he seems, willing enough to sort of, take the ball with it in his hands and try to get a first down and any means.
It is just
we'll
funny.
see if Afita can do that too.
It is just funny to me that it's 4 or bust.
Yeah.
Every quarterback has either had 4 exactly or no more than 1.
Well, to be fair, ASU's quarterback, you didn't include Bo Scadaboo.
This is true. Bo Scadaboo definitely had his Wildcat
if you include him,
rushes.
That's a different story. Yeah. Let's go to my last over-under, which is going to be 8.5 USC tackles for loss. Trojans lead the nation in tackles for loss, at least against FBS opponents. They're averaging 9.8 per game. Against Colorado, they had just 8, which is still very good, but the fewest since week 1 when they only had 7. The Wildcats are 46 in the country in allowing TFLs. Pretty middling there. Better than average, but in the middle of the pack, certainly. But they've only allowed 4.6 per game. The line is at 8.5, which is double that. That's usually what SC does, though. 8.5 tackles for loss for USC. It's a lot, but
this is just so high. USC is absolutely capable of it, obviously, like they're doing it most games. But I did kind of like the look of Arizona's offensive line from what I saw of them against Washington. I thought they did a pretty decent job of keeping things in front of them. So I'm taking the under on this. It's just so high. I if it was 6.5, I might have considered 7.5, maybe even, but at 8.5, I just don't like it. I'm going under.
Isn't this the quintessential proof that SC is the boom and bust defense?
Yes.
That they lead the country in tackles for loss and give up all those 20+ yard plays?
Yes.
They do both of those.
Yeah.
Which is just, chef's kiss. Let's get to game predictions before we wrap this thing up and go to the old mailbag. USC and Arizona, 7:30 p.m. ESPN. The Vegas spread 21.5 points in favor of the Trojans. Bill Connolly's SP Plus projection has USC winning 43-24. Alicia, what's your score prediction?
I'm going USC 42, Arizona 21. I think USC's offense probably maybe puts up more points than 42. I'm just a little bit, I don't know, a little bit nervous just about the way that Washington wasn't able to sort of have their way with Arizona's defense. That certainly makes me wonder how much of that was, like I said, I'm not sure how much of that was Washington just being out of sorts because they were on the road.
Yeah.
And how much of something that Arizona was doing was at least keeping things in front of them. I have zero faith in USC's defense. I think I don't know. If they hold Arizona to under 20 points, then by God, good. Good
Yeah.
job, guy. Good job. I'm pretty much out on the defense. So yeah, 21 even feels low. Like I'm probably being too generous at this point, considering how far out I am on the defense. But yeah, 42-21.
So no worry at all about the upset alertness or trap game ahead of Notre Dame, any of those things.
No. I don't know that this game will be a blowout the way that USC did against Stanford or Nevada.
Mhm.
But I also don't think that this game will necessarily be in great doubt for very long.
I basically feel the same way. I have SC winning 52-27. I think there will be points in it. I think SC scores a lot. It's at home. I think the game control is way more in their favor than it was, say, the last 2 weeks, which certainly in the second half got a little squirrely. SC probably jumps out, leads something like 31-10 at half, and then gives it a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Whatever. 52-27 is what I got. And then SC goes 6-0 to get ready for your alma mater Notre Dame next week.
Yeah. The look ahead is not nothing. It's certainly not nothing.
It's something. It's definitely there for sure. All right, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right. Let's start with a voicemail we got from Dan in Valley Village.
Hey, Rando Troy. It's Dan from Valley Village. I was just finishing up the car cast on from Saturday, and you guys were chatting about people being more pessimistic and less celebratory of the team that we have now. And I think there's a lot to do with maybe the circumstances and the teams that you may or may not have seen play in the past. For example, I was at SC from 98 through 02. And I was there with Paul Hackett, Barf, and we were the worst team in the Pac-10 at the time. And it was atrocious. I mean, it was just bad football, top to bottom. It was just misery. And yeah, there were a few of us in the stands, but it was just because we're total fan nerds and couldn't not watch. But it was painful. And then you go into 02. I mean, that was Pete Carroll's first year, and yeah, that was a little painful too, a little clunky. And then to see the teams that have come after, I don't think there'll be ever a team that I would not look at as a great USC team. Compared with the team, you look back and you go, wow, we are not that. We are awesome. We're being talked about. We're not the sludge of the Pac-10, and we're actually relevant. I'm flabbergasted that people take this team or any of our teams for granted like that. I know I don't, and I think that, yes, this team's not perfect, but I agree with both of you. To watch Caleb Williams and do his stuff is astounding, and a moment that I'll remember when he's in the NFL, and we'll just be like, yeah, I saw him play when. Anyway, thanks again. Fight on.
Thanks for the call, Dan. I've never related to a call more than this, I think, because I am a child who came up watching USC football in the 90s, and we talked about this before. Like, I watched USC before the Pete Carroll era, so I've said this many times that, like, I joke about we joke about bowl eligibility. Like, yeah, SC could become bowl eligible on Saturday night, right? But like, as a kid, it was an exciting thing when SC got bowl eligible because like that wasn't a given. And so like when I think of like, I still remember the first time that I watched the thing where Herb Street was talking about Carson Palmer once, and this is like 2001, and I'm like, oh my god, they're talking about SC, like, oh my god, like Yes. And like, so to compare when you see, some of the comments from like the car cast of like just the true dire and angst and everything, it's like, slow down a little bit.
Well,
Slow down.
The thing that I want to reflect on a little bit is because I'm not. I mean, I'm a child of the '90s, but I'm not a USC fan of the '90s. I didn't
Right.
like sports until I was like 12 or 13.
Until you went to Notre Dame, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like sports until Pete Carroll and Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart made me fall in love with USC football, and I always credit them with that because I didn't like this watching sports. I was mad at my dad and my brothers who would take up the TV and watch sports. I've said this many times. But the thing is, I am a child of the Pete Carroll era message boards. And I can tell you, like, people look back on those years fondly. Absolutely. USC won national titles. USC was a dominant force.
Yeah.
The people on message boards were big mad all the time through that entire era too. USC would be down at halftime every single week. People would talk about how USC didn't prepare properly. People complained about Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator. People complained about Lane Kiffin, the offensive coordinator. People complained about the Pac-12 road opener always being a loss for USC and Pete Carroll not having the team ready. People complained about this, that, and the other thing. Like, there were a million complaints about the Pete Carroll era during the Pete Carroll era. I remember arguing with people in like freaking 2009 about how they were saying that the USC should fire Pete Carroll. And I was just like, are you insane? Like, are you insane? And I was sort of proven right because Pete leaves, and then look at what happens. You have to appreciate the greatness that you have when you have it. You have to appreciate what is in front of you. And people have a really hard time doing that because people are so fixated on the doom and gloom of like what they, instead of focusing on what you are winning, people are focusing on the doom and gloom of what you might not win. And, I was very young when USC was actually winning the national title. So I was far more conscious and present in those message boards when USC was getting left out every year and people were complaining about USC getting left out every year. And the UCLA loss that keeps USC out of what is almost certainly a national title win. Those things were all, Ron Burgundy in the chat is one of the dudes that I was on the We Are SC message board with. It's really cool seeing like the people from those times, but like that's the sort of thing. Like, people are always unhappy because people are just like stuck in their own minds.
It's the sports talk trope, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nobody more famous on a football roster than the backup quarterback and all those sort of things, right? Like, yeah, I get it. I fully get it. At the same time, SC's 5-0, people.
And that's
5-0.
And that's the other thing. The other thing I want to sort of like kind of address, and we're just gonna have to keep addressing this. But like, in the chat, Sagar says, Alicia's not being optimistic because I said the zero faith in USC's defense thing. Like, I think for me, there's a line that you can walk where you can, like, my hope would be that all USC fans are able to find a sweet spot where you can recognize the sort of like privilege of the position that we're currently in, especially knowing what it's like to have Clay Helton as your head coach, and even like what it's like to have Steve Sarkisian in that time in his life as your head coach, or Lane Kiffin as your head coach in that time of his life. Having been through all of those things, to understand and recognize the really strong position that USC is in at the current moment, while also sort of being able to turn around and acknowledge that, like, yeah, the defense is a problem. I don't have any way to defend the defense. I basically, what happened is today I spent a lot of time in the stats pulling together our rundown and our graphics for the YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. And it got me down on the defense real bad, guys. It did real bad. at the same time, like, I'm not sitting here saying that USC this is not even the worst USC team. This is not even in the top 5 worst teams that of the USC like the last decade for USC. So, like, don't get it twisted.
Well, I know that there's the sentiment of like not wanting to waste Caleb Williams and all this stuff. And yeah, I thoroughly agree. Yeah, you don't want to waste Caleb Williams. You absolutely don't want to. At the same time, don't let the frustration of not wanting to waste him pass you by the opportunity to like cherish him being here at the same time. You know what I mean? Like like you said, there's duality of both things. Appreciate that SC has this incredible offense and has a coach that everyone in America wants and all those things. At the same time, be critical of everything else because you should be critical of everything in life.
You're allowed to be critical.
Yeah.
Back to message board speak. One of the things that always frustrated me is the idea of like sunshine pumpers and doom and gloomers. And it's like, por qué no los like middle?
Well,
Jamie Gage in the chat says Pete Carroll's defense gave up 40 plus to Fresno State. Yeah, like Pete Carroll is the best head coach that I've ever seen at USC. Absolutely wonderful head coach who I would, in a heartbeat would love to have back at USC. But also like he missed a million opportunities, guys. Like he wasted Mark Sanchez. He wasted the greatest defense in USC history and one of the potentially greatest defenses in the history of college football. He wasted that in 2018 because he didn't figure out how to stop. 2008, because he couldn't figure out how to stop Jacquizz Rodgers for a half.
Right.
Like he wasted a team in 2007 on
2006. They should have like murdered Ohio State in the championship game if they didn't lose to a bad UCLA team, 13-9.
Yeah,
right?
sorry, it was 2006, 13-9. Like that loss was inexplicable. It made no sense. It was a mismanagement on every level. Like, but that's sort of the point. Even the best head coaches are not perfect all the time. Like you have to give some grace. I don't know.
Yeah. I want to get to a question we got from your 5 head, and there's 2 questions here back to back, and I want to sort of address both of these. First one says, let me ask y'all this. If USC basically became what Oklahoma was under Lincoln Riley, who's happy? ? Heisman trophies, 11 win seasons, but no national titles. Followed by, who thinks Riley is sticking around to play LSU, Michigan next year on the schedule without Caleb? Okay. I need to address this. Like, when SC hired Lincoln Riley, like, do you want me to play the Rave Line clip of like 8 minutes of SC fans losing their mind because of what Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma and what they wanted him to do here? Like, he won 11 games every year, multiple Heisman trophies, like repeatedly
in the playoff,
gone to the playoff multiple times.
By the way,
repeated everything he did every single year. Like, yes, people would be like, people should be happy with that because that's what people wanted. That's the reason Lincoln Riley got hired. Every single coach and every single team in America would have wanted Lincoln Riley. And you can look back and say, well, Lincoln Riley didn't do enough because he didn't win national titles. The only teams winning national titles the last few years are Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson. Like, everybody else has not done it. Like, it's extremely difficult. And this idea that like, Lincoln Riley's not going to stick around when the Caleb Williams is gone. Do you not realize he had Baker Mayfield for 3 years and then went out and he had gotten Kyler Murray a couple years before, stashed him on the roster from Texas A&M, and then won the Heisman and beat all his records the next season. And then he went out and got the national championship winning quarterback from Alabama, Jalen Hurts, and did the same thing the year later and almost won another Heisman Trophy. Like, he replicates the thing over and over and over again. So this idea that like, he's not going to win with Caleb Williams, and so then, the window to win is gone is I'm sorry, it's bullshit because we've seen Lincoln Riley reload year after year. Like that's what his track record is. And yes, you can sit here and talk about the defense, and the defense absolutely limits his ability to win a national championship and all of those things. And there's valid criticisms. There was a comment in the chat about SC is 98th in some sort of defensive stat and we haven't played anybody yet and all those things. Yes, you should be upset about those. And you should want the defense to be better, but have some sort of overall picture to where everything is. Like this idea that Lincoln Riley was a pumpkin the whole time is it is weird, retconning that doesn't need to happen. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I would take 11 wins for the next 10 years. I'm just saying, because I've lived through not taking 11 wins.
Yeah,
that's just sort of where I'm at. But no, this isn't
11 win purgatory should bother you after the year 5.
Yeah. Let's talk
in
5 years. Yeah, exactly. This isn't a Sam Darnold championship window situation for USC. You said, this isn't a one-off. Like once you have Sam Darnold, you will no longer win anything situation. That's just sort of not what it is. Well, all I want from Lincoln Riley is to recognize that his defensive coordinator needs to change and to make a good hire. That's and if he does that, then we're having a different conversation. The NFL talk is the NFL talk. I still maintain that if he wanted to go to the NFL, he would have just gone to the NFL. That's sort of where I'm at on that. But who knows? If that happens, then he's going to the NFL, and USC's in a position where they have to make a new hire and go back through the cycle of, well, every hire in college football is 50-50, and good luck with that. And then everyone's sitting here screaming if USC doesn't make the right hire and wishing for the good old days when Lincoln Riley was 11-1 or 10-2 at USC and his defense was giving up 50 points a game.
If he did go to the NFL, first of all, it means that NFL teams again what he's doing, which just validates what he's doing.
Yeah.
Secondly, I don't think that the allure to the NFL is what it used to be. In part because he makes so much money right now, he's going to go to the NFL and make it's a lateral move financially for less power. And one of the critiques about Lincoln Riley that you can have is things like wanting to control the media, right? Or wanting control, talk about injuries or any of these things. People say that he's, too indebted to Alex Grinch, but he has the ability to, whether or not he is and keeps Alex Grinch on staff and all those things, right? In the NFL, you lose that power. Why would he go to the NFL? And
he should also just look at the history of college football coaches.
Exactly. None of them have panned out, the exception of Pete Carroll.
Well, and what was
Pete Carroll was an NFL guy before.
And what was Pete Carroll? Pete Carroll was an NFL guy who landed in college because he had no other options. It's very, very different. There are no he was a good college head coach and became a good NFL head coach examples to be found anywhere. So
LBC Robbie says with this offensive fantasy happy NFL, he's going to get calls. Yeah, I think he will. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think he'll get calls. Yeah. I don't think it's a given that he will absolutely, that he will take those calls. But, and like I said, if he does, guess what? I don't have any control over it. And I just have to go and sit and wait for USC to hire a new coach and then hope that gets done well.
I think his next job is most likely in the NFL. I would bet on that than the alternative. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be this quick. If it is, it is. But I don't know. I don't think it's worth overly stressing about at this point.
No.
To be quite honest. Let's go to a question from Cameron. What Clay Helton symptoms are you seeing in Lincoln Riley so far this year, such as stubbornness, loyalism, coach speak? What symptoms can be resolved from Lincoln Riley?
I saw somebody in the chat who said, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, who said something about how USC fans just went through the Clay Helton the sort of coach speak of Clay Helton. And I think there's something to that USC fans are maybe a little bit less patient on the coach speak front because the coach speak that Clay Helton did got so many people so frustrated and upset. So I think that Lincoln would be served to just not, but he's a coach. He's going to coach speak, and ultimately,
Yeah.
the coach speak is just sort of what you get. It's one of the reasons why, when I was on the beat and sort of doing interviews, I got really disillusioned even with the process of speaking to coaches, because it was like, well, we're going to ask questions and they're just going to give us answers that don't mean anything, and then people are just going to get mad at like us for not asking the questions that get meaningful answers. But it's like the coaches are just like, they don't have to give you meaningful answers.
They're not going to answer those
It's
questions
not their
anyways.
job.
Yeah.
Like that's not. It's you don't get the meaningful answers until for anybody, by the way, that's for anyone that's smart and doesn't want to cause a ruckus, which none of these coaches should want, or players should want to cause a ruckus. You don't get those answers until way down the line when they're so removed from it that they could feel like they can speak freely. So, the only thing that I would say is I think Lincoln's coach speak could be a little bit, he could do with just being maybe a little bit more just la la, like, whatever, we're just doing whatever, instead of saying things like it takes a trained eye to see what's going on with the defense, because like that
Yeah.
felt insulting.
Yeah.
But
It
no,
felt
it's
like
defensive is what it is.
frustration
Yeah.
speaking. Yeah.
He could be less defensive is sort of what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The other thing is like that most coaches are the same way. Like especially at the highest level, like every single coach um gives frustrating press conferences, is ornery, or like any of those things. Like that is that's a thing that you see all over the place. Doesn't It's not an excuse, certainly. I do think that like SC had it really good with Pete Carroll. Like Pete Carroll was had a lot of charisma and a lot of quotes, and would fire you up in a press conference and all those things. I know that people felt that way with Coach O too, and there's not many coaches like that.
Yeah.
There really isn't.
LBC Robbie in the chat says, this is why I don't understand the new interview the coach after every timeout thing. Like, yeah. Has a coach ever said anything interesting going
No.
into or out of halftime?
No.
Has it ever been something that's been
No.
nothing more than in one ear out the other?
Did you see the Chip Kelly thing about where he was given the reporter something about like credit for having, it was a question about the clock situation, like the new timing rules. It's like something about like I'm sure you guys love it with more commercials or whatever.
Yeah.
Like yes, that's
Yeah.
yes,
There you go.
perfect. But yeah, unless it's some sort of injury thing about like, is the quarterback going to come back in?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, there's you're not going to get anything out of those sort of ones. The baseball ones are the worst. The ones that they record in the middle of the inning and then play back a minute later. Yeah, those are horrible. LA Fred says, what's to be read from Malik Brown being back at practice, if anything?
I'm not reading anything into it.
I think you could look at it the most pessimistic way possible and say that maybe that means that like the Zachariah Branch injury is more serious than it's being led on to be. But I wouldn't read it that way.
No, I just think that even if he's going to transfer, even if he's just taking a red shirt, it behooves him to be practicing.
Yeah.
For the future of his career, he's better off practicing.
Yeah. David Orange County says, is it concerning that D-Ditch has one horrible snap per game? What can we attribute that to? Yes.
Yeah.
It's
something. I don't know. Centers,
definitely concerning.
Centers and their weird snap issues, I feel like the kind of thing that's just like, Is it the yips? I don't know. Does it need to be worse to call it the yips, or is it just like a weird thing with snapping? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. And there was a comment during Over Under about doing a line on bad snaps. That's a good one.
It's just so
I might save that for next week.
It's just so hard to set those lines because then we have to like go through and make.
What is a bad snap? A fumbled snap?
Yeah.
A snap over the head?
Like if Stat Broadcast doesn't have that stat, the chances of me making it an Over Under are getting lower and lower.
If it's a high snap but it's not a fumble snap, is that a bad snap? Like I don't know. Like one of those things.
Yeah.
Roman Murray says, if you were flying the wall between discussions between Riley and Grinch, what do you think they're talking about?
What I would pay to be a fly on the wall to see an actual candid, like in private conversation between the two of them after that game, after that Colorado game, like what I would give to be in the room where they are going through the tape of that game. I can't imagine.
It would be fascinating. It really would, especially because seemingly then you would know what the play call was too, and then you'd be able to understand like, okay, was there a mistake with how the play call came in? Was it just a bad decision on the play call? Was it a player screwing it up? Was it multiple players? Like, what is the context for like this massive error that happens, right? Like, you'd learn those things, which would be fascinating. But yeah, I think the reality is they just want to fix this too. Like they don't want to be in this situation either. Wagner says, is it possible that Riley actually thinks that the defense is good and doesn't see the deficiencies, or is he just too loyal to Grinch and can't bring himself to replace him?
I suspect that when they're in those rooms watching the tape, they are often enough able to say that play broke down because of an individual player making a mistake. A missed tackle, a missed assignment, a missed thing, whatever. I think that is happening often enough that they are able to convince themselves that it is the player's fault and not.
We talked about this after the Nevada game, right? The whole I don't want to bring this up a million times, but I know that I keep doing it. The 3 plays were half their yards kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to chalk that up and say, well, if we made the 3 plays there, like if Demarion Jackson doesn't get beat down the sideline, and then if Anthony Beavers doesn't get beat here, and then if so-and-so wraps up this tackle there, like everything else is working. So clearly the scheme is working if we just execute.
Yeah.
I absolutely think that plays a role there.
You have players saying that. You have
that's
Bryson,
that's what
Shaw
the players are saying.
passionately saying that in the media, that it's the players that need to step up for Grinch, that they're hanging him out to dry. And it's like, okay, yes, I fully understand how you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
especially when they lead the country in
trees.
tackles for loss, right? Like,
yeah,
it's easy to buy into those things. Yeah, it's just about seeing the whole picture. Yeah. John says, would you rather play a banged up Delara or a healthy Fafita? When you put it that way, I think you probably take a banged up anybody.
Probably a banged up Delara, because Delara is already mistake prone, and banged up players tend to make more mistakes.
Maybe he doesn't run as much.
Yeah, can't run, has trouble planting. Maybe. Yeah, I think you take the banged up Delara.
Yeah. Either way, I don't want to, I don't want to get too bullish on SC's like chances here this week, especially given how the defense has played the last 2 weeks. But I do think that like it's not the worst situation. They're not the worst options. Is having a guy making his first road start or a gunslinger who's prone to making mistakes potentially not be at 100%.
Yeah.
Like those aren't the worst 2 outcomes either way.
Yeah.
Famous last words, but yeah.
Yeah.
Lamont says, this is a statement. I've never seen so many complaints of a 5-0 team. We were 4-8. I prefer this team over what we watched with Helton. If CLR leaves to follow Caleb, can you really blame him? What do you think about this idea that like Lincoln Riley could feel unappreciated here?
I don't buy that.
I don't
I don't
really either.
I don't think,
I see what Lamont is saying here, and I
Yeah.
totally get it. I don't buy it in the sense of like you can't imagine that you'd go anywhere else and get it better. Considering if you go to the NFL, like you could get fired after year 1 in the NFL.
here's the thing. It's not like Lincoln in Oklahoma didn't get tons of criticism as well
Right.
for the same reasons that he's
Also,
getting them here.
remember,
The difference is that when you are in Norman, Oklahoma, you can't escape that. The thing that everyone, coaches, players, the reason they like playing in Los Angeles, coaching in Los Angeles, is you can fade away into the crowd. You are
Yeah.
not the most famous person in the room 90% of the time. So
Well,
if you're Lincoln Riley and that's the thing that's bugging you, like you should stay in Los Angeles because you're not going to be the subject of the like you go to the SEC, it just means more, all that
yeah.
BS. But like they are more rabid over there. You can't escape it over there. Whereas in LA, like Lincoln Riley's not getting recognized half the time in LA because half of LA doesn't pay attention to sports.
But I think the other side is like, and we just had this conversation with friends the other day. Unless you're on the Lakers, I think any celebrity, just about any celebrity, with the exception of like being a Laker, can go out in LA and have no problem.
Yeah.
Relatively no problem. Like, okay, maybe not like maybe not like George Clooney or something, right? But like, and the reason I say except for the Lakers is because they're tall. Like they
can't blend in.
They can't blend in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like LeBron is only getting so much anonymity, but even
Yeah.
LeBron, I'm sure, can find ways to increase his anonymity or increase his sort of comfortability with not having to deal with all of that. Like,
Right. But I think that you go to the NFL, and I think that you're facing, calls after week 1 just like of angry Bears fans,
Yeah.
right? Like Bears fans, yeah, there might be some sort of like honeymoon period for like 2 weeks. Then you lose to the Packers and it's not going to be a honeymoon period anymore. So like, yeah, I don't know. And then the other thing you talked about with Norman and think what happened in Oklahoma. Yeah, people were critical of him in Oklahoma, and they were also so mad that they made it their entire personality to hate Lincoln Riley for leaving. When Notre Dame people were genuinely happy that Brian Kelly left, as evident by them not giving a crap, right? Like, that's a different story there. Okay, rapid fire on these last ones. Greg says, which transfer has exceeded your expectations and which one has not met them?
Honestly, Bear Alexander. I was expecting Bear to come in and have a few moments of brilliance, but not sort of be an instant impact the way that he has. So he has exceeded my expectations. In terms of underperformed, I think it's got to be Mason Cobb to me. Just because I really needed him to come in and be a stabilizing force for the linebackers, and he hasn't been.
Yeah, I think maybe there was too much
probably
expectations put on Cobb, maybe. But yeah, I think Cobb's the right one for the disappointing one. If he can build on the Colorado game, I think that'd be huge. The one who's exceeded expectations, I think it is Bear. I think it is Bear Alexander, especially when you compare him to the other guys with high expectations like Anthony Lucas and Jack Sullivan, who haven't necessarily had the big impact that Bear Alexander has had.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Sullivan's another one that
I know there's a lot of people that want to see him out on the field more.
Yeah, I just feel like he hasn't been out there, and the fact that he hasn't been out there is probably an issue. But also, my expectations for him were not nearly as high as they were for Mason Cobb. So,
yeah, for sure. All right, let's go to a question from Sagar. For me, set the tone for your Saturday night. Maybe a beer, some chicken tenders, on the recliner? How does it shake out?
Oh, before we answer this, Jerome in the chat said Marshawn Lloyd. That is a yes. I almost forgot that Marshawn Lloyd hasn't been here all along at USC.
This is true.
Marshawn
Lloyd.
The answer is Marshawn Lloyd. I didn't think that Marshawn Lloyd would become my favorite football player of all time in the matter of 4 weeks.
Wow,
so,
and you forgot him. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What's my Saturday night look like? I don't know. Maybe I could get some chips, make up some nachos. That would be fun.
Yeah,
little nacho night.
good.
Nacho nights.
We were just talking, what I need is for somebody to realize that, like the snack pack of chips where it comes with like Cheetos and Doritos and Lay's and blah, blah, blah. I need that, but of tortilla chips because I want tortilla chips all the time, but I don't want to buy a big bag of tortilla chips because I'm not going to consume the big bag of tortilla chips when we're just at home, like we're not having a party. Or we would consume them and that would be bad because we just go through them too quickly. Like I need a portion controlled snack bag of tortilla chips, just plain like Tostitos or something like that I can just have in the house, that when I feel like having a thing of nachos, I just have a bag. Or when I feel like doing a dip or something like that, I just have a bag. But that it's just like it doesn't exist. Why does that not exist?
First of all, it's because mass-produced tortilla chips are bad. Even the Mission ones, not great. Mission is the best of the on the border ones are probably the best one, but like even then, like not great.
Well,
so I think that's a big factor. The second thing is tortilla chips are something you can just run through. The idea of like being able to eat just 3 of them, are you crazy?
Yeah, but that's why that's why I don't buy the big bag because we're either going to waste them or eat them all in one go, and it's gonna be like, well, that's not good.
Yeah. Sagar says nachos, fantastic call. I agree. I think that might be the move. Now you should have picked up chips when you were at Costco.
I didn't pick up chips when I was at Costco. I thought about it, but you know why I didn't do them? Because the ones they have are like the bag of Mission ones strips that I don't really care for. So yeah, maybe we need to pop over to like Vallarta or something.
Yeah. SJ in the chat says if SC is upset, I'll eat a pickle dipped in honey mustard.
SJ, we're holding you to that. We're holding you to that. I don't know if you would find that necessarily unpleasant. I certainly would for one of those elements, and I know Michael would for both of those elements. So,
there's the talk about the Santitas chips.
I don't think I've had those.
They're too seasoned for me.
Okay.
Not like it's too seasoned, like it's too spicy or anything.
Like
I just think that it's just a little. It's just a little too manufactured.
They're not enough of a plain based
no,
chip,
not in that sense. They just taste too mass produced.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But at the same point, like I like the ones from the Ralph's or whatever that you just get the big bag.
Mm-hmm.
But like those have sucked lately when we've had them.
Well, but those are also like you get the big bag and then you have to like portion them out if you're going to actually keep them. They don't keep very well once you open them, in my opinion. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Cameron says the salt is the best part. I get it. I'm probably describing it wrong, like how I don't like. I like them salty. It's just that there's something about those chips that just don't do it for me.
The salt that they use.
I like that they have a big $2 thing on the bag, and you get a big ass bag for $2. That's clutch, but like they're just not my favorite type of tortilla chips. So yeah. Okay. Also, Tostitos suck, but
Tostitos are fine. Like they're just fine. They're not
bad.
They're not great.
Tostitos, great name, bad chip. So, all right, we'll wrap it up there. We will be back with the CardCast pretty immediately following the game on Saturday night, USC and Arizona. You know how to reach us. Email address, rantofdetroitfanside.com. Phone number, phone number 818-643-7227 is the phone number. You can call us into the Rant Line, the Rave Line, whatever you want it to be. It's there. It's always open. You can call it. Leave us your voicemails there. For our members, you can always join us, $4.99 a month. If you watch this long, I think you owe us a like on the video, I think, and at least a subscribe. If you want to be super awesome, you can become a member, $4.99 a month to get all of our bonus content, including Thursday nights, right after dark. We'll be live right after dark Thursday night, 9 p.m. It'll be fun. So come join us there, and you get access to the Discord as well. So that is a grand old time as well. So until then, we will see ya. See ya.
See ya.
See ya. Jesse, see ya. We said this earlier in the day, she literally stopped and like, what? It was great. Okay, bye.
All right. Bye.